Hey guys, Mike here from Lunch Money Comics. Today I'm in Raynham, Massachusetts at the massive indoor Raynham Flea Market. Let's go find some comic books. Welcome to New England. That was a pretty cool indoor flea market. They had a lot of comic books and I got some pretty cool stuff, including a very early Daredevil book. But the weather's turning quickly. I need to get home. I'll see you back there and show you guys what I got. So there you go, guys. That was the massive Raynham Flea Market in Raynham, Massachusetts. As you could tell, it's in a huge building. It's like an airport hangar full of hundreds of vendors. There's something like 500 different vendor booths in there, including food and concession stands. Just an absolutely massive place. But of course, I was there in the middle of winter and confined to the inside of the building. Evidently, in the warmer months, the entire outside area, all those acres of parking lot they have, are also full of vendors. So I can only imagine how big this flea market is in the summer. I can't wait to go back and check it out. Now, a few thoughts I have about this flea market really quick. One, when you think of flea markets in New England, you think of kind of like old-fashioned antiques and furniture. It's not really that kind of flea market. It was more modern stuff. But if you are into collectibles, oh man, this is absolutely the place to go. You know, there were sport cards, coins, action figures, vintage toys, Legos, and yes, of course, comic books galore. I mean, if you were into any of those collectibles, definitely this is the place that you're going to want to check out if you're ever like south of Boston. The other thought I have is that there were times where it seemed really busy in there. I mean, when I walked in, it didn't look that bad, but a lot of these little like alleyways can get pretty narrow, and there were times I'd turn a corner and all of a sudden it is shoulder to shoulder. The reason I bring this up is that I know some people get freaked out by enclosed spaces or big crowds. especially in the last couple of years. So if you're one of those people that can be a little much for you, I'm just gonna throw it out there right now. If it was that busy on a random Sunday in the winter, I can only imagine like on a really busy day in the summer what this flea market is. Just a word of caution out there. So the Raynham Flea Market is open every single Sunday all year round, and then also on Saturdays between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'll make sure to put a link down in the description so you can go check it out for yourself. Obviously, there were a ton of comic books there, guys, and I got a lot of really cool ones, and you can probably tell from the footage or the thumbnail or my t-shirt or the books behind me, I got a lot of Daredevil books. That seemed to be the theme of the day. But my quest for cool Daredevil books did not end when I left the Raynham Flea Market. Before I explain what I mean, if you like this sort of stuff, go hit the like button, leave me a comment, feel free to subscribe, follow me on Instagram. Let's talk about some comic books. Okay, let's start off with some smaller books first. Obviously, there were some pretty big comic book vendors there, but there were a lot more smaller ones. And one of them was a gentleman by the name of Jerry. He had lots of cheap back issues, and he had a fun mnemonic to remember where he was. He was Jerry in row G at the Flea. So if you're in Raynham and you're looking for cheap back issues, go find Jerry. And you guys know me, I love my X-Men. I'm trying to fill in my Chris Claremont run. I've been told I talk about the X-Men too much on my channel. Too bad, they're my favorite. I'll just go through them really quick. First up, we have number 163. I believe this is the first time that Carol Danvers gets her binary powers. Number 164 is that very famous cover of her as binary. Then we have number 170. This is a matchup between the X-Men and the Morlocks. You see Storm fighting Callisto there. Then we have number 178. This is the X-Men fighting Mystique's Freedom Force. Just a cool cover. And finally, number 220 was something bad happening to Forge and punk rocker Storm there. So he wrote the prices right there on the poly bags. I think the total came to $13. He gave me a deal for $10. So I think he always does like package deals like that. But again, you know, if you're at this flea market looking for back issues, go see Jerry and Rogi at the Flea. He'll give you a good deal. So the vendor I spent the most time with at Raynham was Sensational Comics. You guys saw them in the footage. They had a awesome selection of comic books, including some really good wall books and a couple books I'm going to show you in a second. But they also had a huge collection of Funko Pops, including some like really rare ones. So if you're into Funko Pops, definitely stop by Sensational Comics if you're there. And if you're looking for comic books, you can't miss them because they are by far the biggest comic book vendor there. It was run by a guy named Joe, which is a super cool guy. We had some great conversations. And yes, I got some really good Daredevil books from him, but the first book I'm going to show you is not Daredevil, but it is a book that is very popular right now, and it is this. This is Marvel Premiere number 47 from 1979 with an amazing Bob Layton cover, John Byrne pencils on the inside, and the claim to fame on this one is that it is the first appearance of Scott Lang as the second Ant-Man. It's also the first appearance of his daughter Cassie Lang, who will eventually become Stature or Stinger, one of the Young Avengers. And everyone knows who Scott Lang is because he's played by Paul Rudd in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the reason why this book is so hot is that very soon, any day now, by the time this video premieres, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is coming out. So because of that, you know, in the last couple of months, this book has been sort of high, but I've noticed it coming down a little bit. Maybe that's just because the comic market is coming back down to earth, but I've wanted this book for a while. I love the Bob Layton cover. I just couldn't justify spending a lot of money on it. But because I got such a great price on this one, I picked it up. Now, all the books I got from Sensational Comics, I got as a package deal. He had a $50 sticker price on this, so I probably got it for like $35 or $40. But it's a great presenting book. There's only one small issue. There's a small tear down in the bottom corner here, but otherwise, it's a great looking book, and I'm happy to pick it up. I think it's one of those books, guys, that it might be a little hot right now because of the hype. You could probably wait until after the movie came out, and it'll come down even more. But because I could get such a good deal on it, I was happy to pick it up. I've wanted it for a while. It's really cool looking. So there you go, guys. Marvel Premiere number 47, first appearance of Scott Lang as Ant-Man. All right, let's talk about the Daredevil books. Now, I love Daredevil. I have a pretty good Daredevil collection, especially of Silver Age Daredevil. And I always have a list on my phone of like key issues that I want of Daredevil books. So whenever I find, you know, a box of Daredevils, I just go through and sort of pick out the ones I need. I found a couple here that I was pretty excited to find. The first one is this. This is number 102. It's from 1973. And the claim to fame on this one is that it is the first comic book written by Chris Claremont. Chris Claremont's my favorite writer, obviously primarily known for 17 years on X-Men, but this is actually the first book he ever wrote. And what was really cool about all of these Daredevil issues around the 100 issue mark is that Black Widow had second billing alongside Daredevil. And not only did they have like a professional superhero relationship, they also had a personal one as well. And I really like the matchup between these two people here. It's also an appearance by my favorite dumb villain of all time, Stiltman. I actually have his first appearance on the wall behind me. So I've wanted this book for a while, just being a Chris Claremont fan, and I was happy to find it pretty cheap. It's not in the best condition, but that's okay. I want to read it. Very cool book. Another book I found and was very happy to discover it is this. This is Daredevil number 42 from 1968. Cover art by Gene Colan, who did a lot of art on these Daredevil books from this era. Written by, of course, Stan Lee. And this is the first appearance of the character, the Jester. Now, the Jester was a pretty big Daredevil villain in the 60s and 70s and then sort of like disappeared. But he's another one of those sort of like clown-themed super villains, you know, akin to like the Joker. And yeah, this is his first appearance. I feel like, you know, he's a character that it's been sort of underutilized for a long time, maybe because he is so similar to a lot of those, you know, jester or clown-themed villains. But still, a really cool presenting book. Funny thing about this book, though, when I found it, it was actually, I thought it was a pretty big chip in the corner. I'll actually put a picture next to me. You can see what I was talking about. And that's why I think it was priced so low. But I got home and I was able to actually realize it was a dog ear. I flipped it out and it presents much, much better. So it looks great. You know, even though it's a white cover and it's kind of dirty, I think for a white cover, it's a pretty good looking book. I see this book every once in a while. It's always beat up, always dirty. I was happy to find this in a pretty good mid to upper grade condition. Very happy to add this to my Silver Age Daredevil collection. So that finally brings us to our biggest book, guys. There were a lot of books I was really interested in, and they were all sort of in like that $200 range, and I wasn't really intending to spend that sort of money, but something about this book really jumped out to me. It's a book that I don't see very often, and despite the fact it's in pretty poor condition, I just had to have it. Maybe I was just in a Daredevil mood. What book am I talking about? You saw it in the footage. It's this. This is Daredevil number 2. It's from 1964, written by Stan Lee, art by Jack Kirby. And obviously, this is the second appearance of Matt Murdock as Daredevil. You got some nice yellow suit Daredevil guys, always cool books to pick up. It's also the second appearance of the character Electro, primarily known as a Spider-Man villain, but once upon a time, he was supposed to be Daredevil's big bad. It's also the first time Matt Murdock meets the Fantastic Four. You see the thing right up there on the cover. Now, obviously, this book has its issues, guys. Most notably, it's missing this top corner. You can't even see where it would be the number 2 issue. There's some chipping along the top and the bottom. There is actually small spine splits at the top and bottom, and probably the most damning is the fact that this top staple is not really attached to the cover. It's like by a millimeter. So not in the best condition. However, it might surprise you to hear me say this. Besides those obvious issues, this book is in incredible shape. The back cover looks good. The inside is almost flawless. And the front cover, besides the obvious issues on the outside, the middle of this cover is beautiful. It's flat. The colors, look at the colors, guys. Look how bright it is. This book presents remarkably well despite its issues. Now, it's probably, if you were to grade it, probably in that like 1.5, 1.8 range. And he had a price of $220, which, you know, I was like, oh, that's a little bit much for a book in this condition. However, he gave me a really good package deal. So he gave me all 4 of these books, which I think the sticker price was somewhere around $300. We ended up getting it down to $250. Now, how that, you know, works out on a book-by-book basis, I'm not really sure. This one must have been a little under $200. You know, the Ant-Man must have been around, you know, $35, $40. These guys were only like $5 each. But the point is, when you can pick up some really early Daredevil, yellow suit Daredevil, pretty cheap, I'm very happy to have this book. I'm sort of working my way back, filling in the Daredevil run from like newest to oldest. So I'm getting back there. I'm only missing a couple in those first 10, but obviously I'm going to get to a point where I need Daredevil number 1. In the meantime, guys, this really scratches that itch for some early Daredevil. So let me know down in the comments if you would have shelled out that money for a book in this condition. I can tell you right now, I'm pretty happy to have this book despite its condition. Daredevil number 2. So I leave the flea market with my little stack of books, pretty happy with my Daredevil editions. But like I said earlier, it wasn't the end of my Daredevil book buying, because there was another book that Sensational Comics had I was very interested in, and it was Daredevil number 168, the first appearance of Elektra. He actually had 2 copies, both were mid-grade in like that mid to low $200 range. And honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that that Daredevil 2 really spoke out to me and I wasn't trying to like save some money, I probably would have bought it then and there. But I didn't, and I leave the flea market, and I go home, and later that night, I'm like, you know, what does this book go for? I've been tracking the prices of this book for a long time since I've wanted it, and I've noticed it really fluctuates depending on whatever, like, the rumor du jour is on the Daredevil property. So I decided to look, and one thing I did notice in that low to mid $200 range, you could get some pretty good raw books, but they were all, I don't know, they looked more beat up than the ones Sensational Comics had. But I also noticed a lot of graded comic books were roughly the same price, and those are more known quantities. So I started looking at like the 6.0s, then the 7.5s, working my way up, and they were all in that mid $200 range. Well, the next day after I'd been to this flea market, I just happened to be looking on eBay, and I saw it. It was a CGC graded 8.5. It had been marked down from $320 on sale for $275. Not only that, but I had recently just got in one of my favorite comic book buying assets, which is credit card points. My credit card gives me lots of options to get like gift cards with my points. One of them is an eBay gift card. So whenever I get to like $100, I end up just getting an eBay gift card so I can buy comic books. I just got one in the week before. So I'm doing the math here. I'm like, okay, now we're down to like $175. Well, what would the shipping be? And then I saw it. It said local pickup option, and it was half an hour away. So the place that was selling this is called Gary Dolgoff Comics. Basically, they are a mail order, eBay seller of comic books. And they have a pretty cool place in Western Massachusetts. But if you go to their website, it says that, it's appointment only. It's not like a store you can go into. So I decided I'm just going to call them. And I said, hey, I see this book on eBay. I live half an hour away. I'm wondering if I was to buy it right now, could I shoot over there and pick it up? And they were like, yeah, of course. So that's what I did. I bought it. I drove half an hour down the street. I found this in an old mill works, like these old mill buildings they fix up. They had a really cool space up on the second floor. And guys, I walked in and it was wall to wall, floor to ceiling of comic books. It was just an incredible sight. A couple of really cool guys that were there. I said which book I was there to pick up. They handed it to me. It still had the $320 price tag right on it. And here it is, guys. This is Daredevil number 168. You can see it's a CGC 8.5. It is the first appearance of Elektra. But more importantly for me, this is the first time Frank Miller took over exclusive writing duties on Daredevil. So he had been doing co-writing duties for some issues before this and been doing the art for a little while along with Klaus Janson. But this is the first time that he took over exclusive solo writing duties. And the reason why that's so important is that Frank Miller is the one who really transformed Daredevil into what we know today. There's a lot of sort of universal things about Daredevil we just assume were always there, like he was enemies with the Kingpin and Bullseye. His relationship with Elektra, was trained by Stick, fights the Hand, all of that stuff. That really only came about in the early 80s because of Frank Miller. He really changed Daredevil from that like typical Silver Age Stan Lee Marvel character into the gritty street fighter that we all know and love. So of all those Frank Miller books that I have in that sort of short run, this was sort of the biggest one. I didn't have it. I've been looking for it. So very happy to get this book, guys. And here's the best part. It was originally $320, on sale for $275. I used my credit card points in free shipping because I picked it up, and I got it for $175. I think that's a pretty great deal. And listen, I made no secret I don't love graded books, but I think it's okay. In this case here, not only because of the deal I got, but also when it's a first appearance of a character and they're right there on the cover, I think it's very cool. It's the first appearance. There she is. One fun fact, though, is her name is misspelled Elektra on the cover a little bit differently than it's supposed to be, but still a very cool comic book, guys. Let me know what you think of this book. Let me know if you think $175 for this graded 8.5 was worth it. I'm very happy to add this to my collection. I think it's going to look great on the shelf behind me. Pretty awesome. So go down to those comments and let me know which of my pickups you like the best. Was it this first Scott Lang Ant-Man, or was it one of the many Daredevil books I got, one of these smaller keys right here, or one of these big two? Daredevil number 168, first appearance of Elektra, or Daredevil number 2. Still blows my mind I picked this one up. And hey, if you're into comic books or any type of collectibles and you are south of Boston, go check out Raynham Flea Market. I'll make sure to put a link down in the description. Maybe go in the summer when it's in full swing. I bet you it's just massive with all those outdoor vendors. And hey, unlike all the brick and mortar places I mentioned, which don't really help you unless you're in New England, if you want to buy some comics from Gary Dolgoff Comics, I will make sure to put a link down in the description as well. They have a pretty big presence on eBay, and I think you can order a book from them no matter where you are. Definitely go check them out. In the meantime, guys, I hope you keep finding comic books in strange and unusual places. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.